Getting my crusty shoes. Hey, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another video. Now today in front of me is the K24 that I've been slowly building on the channel through short form video. And I know it's long overdue, but today what we're gonna be doing is going through a full definitive breakdown of everything that you would need to do for a K-swap in your Honda. Now, this is gonna be going into my 1997 Honda Civic hatchback. And if you guys haven't seen the previous videos on those, I'll make sure to leave a link above. But in the meantime, what I would like to do is give you guys all the information that I've been accumulating over the past couple months in terms of the parts lists, what things to look for, and some of the stuff that I've been learning so far in doing the engine swap. Now, obviously, we haven't gotten to the stage yet of putting this in the car, so there's definitely a lot that is left to go, but I do think that there is some benefit in actually having it here in the flesh, all out of the car so that you can see it on the engine stand, and we can go into more detail as to why I chose this engine and why I think this is a good choice for anybody that wants to do a full engine build on something like this. And on top of that, I'm actually an official sponsor and a part of the hybrid racing team. So if you guys are looking to do anything K-swap related, Hybrid Racing is one of the biggest Honda tuning companies when it comes to K-swaps, specifically for these old Hondas. So I'll also leave that link in the description, and that means you automatically get 5% off everything on the site. Whether that means you're looking for an oil cap or you're looking for a whole RBC intake manifold. They pretty much have everything you need. But I think with that being said, we can go into further detail as to why I chose this engine here. So this is the JDM K24A. You can find these in a lot of the Accord Type S's. You can find these in the JDM Honda Odysseys. And I think there's some other makes and models too that these engines come out of. Now, there's all different variations of this, and they use the code, it's called RBB. So this one is actually an RBB3. So RBB3, all that really tells you is that this actually has the iVTEC 3-lobe VTEC. So this is the one you want. There's some variations where, yes, they do have VTEC, but it's like an economy spec. But in this one, this actually has the 3 cam lobes. And we could even pop off the valve cover here for you guys really quickly, just to show you guys what I'm talking about. And this will give you a better idea of how it looks on the inside. And hopefully this doesn't give me too much trouble here. Oh, I forgot to take the dipstick out. That was my fault. But anyways, here's what the cylinder head looks like with everything taken off. I'll give you a better idea of what we're looking for. Now, as you can see, there is a little bit of wear that happens on the cam lobes, and this is actually just from all the cold starts that you would do with a car like this. But overall, it actually looks pretty good. One way to tell is you can even use like your fingernail and run your finger across this, and you could feel if there's any roughness, but it's actually very smooth. And this is with the engine completely drained, has everything here, and this gives you a better idea of the 3-lobe setup that I was talking about. So that's a huge benefit to the JDM K24A. A more plug-and-play solution for you could actually be the Acura TSX motor. So this is the K24A2 that we got here in the US. So with these specs, one thing is that you can find these for pretty cheap. A lot of these JDM engine depots, they import these in huge masses, and they're very popular for people to want to swap them over and stuff. So that's why I went with this one. And this particular one, I actually picked up from JDM Seattle, and they were very kind to me, and they gave me a great example, really, of out of all the ones that I looked at, you know, we cranked this one by hand, and the compression stroke felt pretty good. But again, we will not really know until we actually put this engine in the car. One thing you'll know too with the K-Series is they actually run on a timing chain. As you can see here that we have this completely exposed. I need to actually put it back to top dead center. You use the lines here to kind of give you that designation there. And you'll also see the RBB on the cam gear itself. And this VTC gear is what determines where the threshold is in degrees when it comes to VTEC. So all that stuff that happens there. So the reason why I also took off a lot of these accessories is because we're going to be upgrading the cams on this. So I'll show you guys that in a sec. So usually there would be a lot of accessories on this side, and you can ignore the chains. We actually had this on the little engine hoist earlier, but this is where a lot of the accessories would live. And the one thing you want to know with the JDM engines is actually that they have different water pump housing design. So for anybody that wants to use this in any case, you just want to consider the fact that if you're going to run a JDM engine, you would have to swap over to the USDM water pump housing if you ever need to replace any of the accessories, because the alternator hooks up differently, the tensioner hooks up differently, all this stuff is all very different. And the good news is, if you want to run AC, the AC compressor would go down here. And for me, I'm actually going to be running AC on this one. So you'll have this at the bottom, and you'll be able to run the belt and, you know, very typical stuff here. But one thing is on the K-Series specifically too, the crank bolts, the crank pulley bolt, very common to get stuck. I think they're torqued down to like 120, 130 foot-pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to remember over time, sitting there spinning constantly, they get very stuck. But luckily we got lucky with this one and it popped right out. So in terms of that though, really, I'm just gonna be running the JDM water pump housing because I don't think there's anything, you know, necessarily wrong with it, but we'll cross that bridge once we get to it, you know. So let me put this valve cover back on just so that we don't introduce other sorts of contaminants and stuff going on here. But at least that gives you a pretty good idea of what we're working with when it comes to the engine itself. It's not too heavy. They're using the tire. Oh my God, that's a backbreaker. Okay, so now going over to transmissions. So you have a lot of choices really when it comes to what you want, but usually a lot of people, they want to go for the 6-speed. So what I have here is actually a K20 Z3 transmission. So this was pulled out of a junkyard car, out of a 2006 Honda Civic Si. And this was a really good choice in terms of us being able to find one, because they're actually pretty tough to find because they have the helical LSD, which is desirable, and it's in pretty good shape. But when I first got it, it was like completely covered in soot, very dirty on the inside. But luckily, I replaced things like the throwout bearing, and I cleaned up the fork. This whole thing was just covered in grease and soot. So maybe I could leave like some clips there for you guys, which I captured in some short form. So I'll also be upgrading the clutch master cylinder while we have it out, some of the lines here, just to clean it up. And then we'll also be using some K-swap shifter cables, which is also something that is a requirement that you want to do, especially if you're going to be doing this in an old Honda. But really, doing the throwout bearing is very easy. There's a little clip, as you can see right here. And on the back side, you would pull this out, and then essentially all of this will come apart, and then you can replace this. And the action here is just this. And use some Honda ultra high temp grease here just to make sure everything was lubricated. So this is just kind of on the back burner right now, as this will be one of the later steps in the process for doing the swap.
There we go.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm just trying to protect it right now. We'll probably have to re-grease it all over again. And luckily, like the axle seals and stuff on the transmission look pretty good. So yeah, I think that should be good. So a couple things that I wanted to show you guys from hybrid racing that are going to make this beneficial for doing this. One common thing is that you're going to notice, especially with the JDM K24, is you have to change the idler pulley bracket. So this is beneficial for doing this. This bracket right here is for the JDM engines. So this is something that you're going to hook up. Once you put all the belts on and everything, you'll start to see that this comes into play. So as you see it in the box, it may be a little bit confusing, but in future videos, once we start putting this thing back together, that will actually be very beneficial, especially since we're going to be running AC on top of this. So you want to make sure that you get the right size belt, which I believe you can find online, depending on what setup you're running, whether it be power steering, no power steering. That will give you a lot of information there. So for this one, now we're going to be using the fuel pressure regulator. So going back to the fuel system, what we were talking about, this is the hybrid racing fuel pressure regulator. So going off of the fuel rail, this is going to be one that, if I can get it out of here, that you'll also need. All fuel systems need some sort of regulation. This one, very high quality piece, and this will look really nice in the engine bay as well. So something there to consider as well. So little final touches here as we get to the finish line with all this stuff. Putting this back in the box now, we'll go over to the shifter. Now, this one is the hybrid racing shifter. This is going to be the one that's more incognito. So Hybrid Racing, they offer this, or they offer the more, I'd say like racing spec where you kind of see everything in the dash. But for us, since we're going to be doing a more OEM plus setup, this will be a good beneficial way for us to be able to run something that retains the center console without you having to take it all apart. Now, it's not going to have all the action here, but trust me, it feels like a bolt action rifle when you put it in gear on these things. So I'm very excited to put this one on. And the shifter cables will come out this way. So you'll attach everything through here, through this little pocket. And what's nice is this is all protected on the undercarriage, so you don't have to worry about dirt or unpleasantries coming into the transmission tunnel or anything like that. So very nice part there for sure. And then we also have the K-Series timing chain tensioner. So since we're running an upgraded oil pump, upgraded cams, one thing that really gets overlooked a lot is actually the timing chain tensioner itself. So this plays a huge role in making sure that the timing chain has enough force on it, especially when you get into these higher revving applications. And it's actually a very important part for us to make sure that this completes the build. So highly recommend checking this out. And it's something that will also be on Hybrid Racing's website. So I think did I cover everything? What else do we have here? The Hybrid Racing fuel pump. So with this, since we're doing the upgraded fuel system, you also want to upgrade the fuel pump. And this is a plug-and-play solution that will work on the Civic EKs. So here's what it currently looks like. Another high-quality product. We'll be able to run more fuel and be able to really maximize gains, especially with the tune and everything. So this is almost like a mandatory thing, I would say, in my eyes. The car will run with the stock fuel pump, but if you really want to utilize all the gains, this is also something worth mentioning in terms of what you want to get there as well. All right, so I kind of gave you guys a quick breakdown of the engine and transmission, but I also didn't give a chance to talk about the real pros and cons versus K20 versus K24. So one of the biggest benefits to the K-Series overall is airflow. Airflow is the name of the game with these, and as much as you can maximize for airflow, these engines are very reactive with any sort of way you can supplement more air being brought into the system that you can complement it with. Okay, so as we go look into the intake manifold now, you'll see that this is actually from the original JDM K24A. And I think this was just good to save. A lot of people just throw these away because there's no real use for them. And as you can see, the first thing you're gonna notice is that it's a two-piece design. So this actually has the electronic throttle body. One thing that you wanna know is that when you put this in an old Honda, you actually have a cable, like a throttle cable. So that's kind of the more old school setup. I think to run this, maybe if you had like the new Haltech systems, you might be able to run electronic throttle body, but in my opinion, it makes more sense just to keep it simple with the cable setup. And that's what a lot of people do with any sort of K-swap. It just makes it a lot more simpler. So there's quite a bit of carbon deposit buildup on this one. And the one thing that is just really evident with this setup is that it's pretty restrictive. So a lot of people can run these, but one of the biggest benefits that has actually been dyno proven is what we actually have on the engine right now. And you can ignore all the oil, that's from us taking it off the valve cover earlier. But this is actually a RBC intake manifold. Now, in terms of intake manifold options, when it comes to aftermarket, of course, there's so many different brands out there that are making crazy ported and polished intake manifolds that you can do, but they were just being much more costly, whereas this one, it's a plug-and-play solution, it's a Honda OEM part, so you can never go wrong, and it looks great, and one thing you'll have to consider is just the one-piece design. As you can see, this one, it sits out a little bit longer, but it has these short but very large plenum for all of this air restrictiveness to basically be alleviated. And another thing that you can do on top of this as well is you can run a larger throttle body. So I have this all taped up. This is a 72 millimeter throttle body, which I think will complement the RBC intake manifold really nicely, especially since this is a naturally aspirated build, really just introducing as much air as possible into the system. And on top of this, when it comes to adding more air, you also want to add more fuel. So this is something you also have to consider as well. So when we add more fuel, what we can do here is we can enlarge the size of the injectors. So over here, I actually have the original fuel rail, which you can run, but this fuel rail will kind of give you a more breakdown of what comes with this. So I believe on the RBB3, they have maybe like 310 or 270 cc. You'd have to fact check me, and you guys in the comments will have to let me know. But these are the original injectors. They're very old, they're very original. And as you can see on this one, I lost a piece of it just from pulling it out of the engine, which happens, you know. And they have the original clips and everything, but it was definitely time to do an upgrade here. So this is not a mandatory thing that you have to do a K-swap, but I would highly recommend it if you want to maximize for power gains. You can see the diameter also on the fuel rail is pretty small in terms of what we'll be showing you here with the hybrid racing fuel rail that we currently have on the engine right now. So this is going to be the fuel rail. I have the fuel lines in the car, but essentially you have these two entry points that you can either go from the sides, but what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna run it from the bottom. So this is gonna be the connecting point where we go underneath from here to kind of tuck the fuel line itself. And then that will go to the fuel pressure regulator, which in the engine bay will be like right around here. And then it'll go through, and we'll also complement that with an upgraded fuel pump. Now, while we're on the topic of the top end, I wanted to show you guys what I'm gonna be using for the camshafts. So nothing wrong with using the cams in this, but since I wanna go naturally aspirated and get the most out of this engine that I can squeeze out of it, this is what I'm gonna be using. And what I'll be using here is Cartel's drop-in cams. So for anybody that's wondering what a drop-in cam actually means, it means that you don't have to mess with the valve springs or the retainers or anything like that. So all you're doing is just taking the cam caps off and then installing the new cam. So I do want to be careful here because this is one of the more expensive and delicate products there. But I mean, I want to give a huge shout out to Kyle and the team over at Cartel. They were super helpful in terms of like what they wanted to recommend to me for the VTC gear, as well as what we would be running here for the drop-in cam. So as we roll this guy out, it's going to be in a lot of packaging, which I'm very grateful for, but I'll at least show you guys really quickly what it looks like. So this, of course, will have its place on the top end of the motor, and we'll be complementing it with an upgraded 45-degree VTC cam gear, which I also have in that box of miscellaneous stuff. But they really do a good job of packing this thing in here. I remember it was a little sticky when I was trying to get it out last time. There it is. Oh my God. I think I need to put some engine assembly lube in here or something. Dude, it's like completely adhered to the cam itself. Oh my God. Anyways, I don't have to take it all the way off. But as you can see, high quality machined, like when it comes to one of the heavy hitters in the game, Cartel is one of those out there for sure. So I'm very, very, very excited to put these ones on. I think this is the back side. So if we were to lay it out, it would be like this in the engine bay itself. So you guys will have to stay tuned for that. Of course, we'll be planning to make some video content on this as well. So there's that to look forward for sure. So I feel like, you know, you can go the route of doing the valves and the retainers and all that. But again, it's just more of what's in your budget. Good thing with this, it's easier solution. So it means you could just drop it in, set it, forget it, and you're pretty much ready to go. Of course, after you get a tune and all that stuff. But regardless, if you're doing a K-swap, you're gonna need to do a tune regardless of the fact. So I'll hold off on this for now, and then maybe I'll show you guys too what I've been trying to do my best when it comes to organization. So when you're doing any sort of swap like this, you really want to stay organized. I feel like this is something that doesn't get mentioned too much in these engine builds on the internet because people just show the before and after. But I think with this will just really show you how much effort goes behind the scenes. So this shows you all the stuff. I put them in all these little parts bags. You can get these on Amazon for a couple bucks and you get tons of them. And the more you can stay organized, the better. And what I actually use too is these are like some extras. So I take these extras from, for example, like this. if there's any random miscellaneous 12 millimeter, 10 millimeter, I'll take it off of this and I'll be able to stash it later. And it's actually been super, super helpful for just like little things that come up. I can't find a bolt. Oh, I have the extras. Stuff that's very beneficial. Like, you know, of course you want to keep the starter there, but I think this will be a good time now to segue into the mounts. So as you see right here, this is actually the original passenger mount that came off the JDM K24A. But when you do a swap for a Honda, you can't actually use this. And what you want to actually use is the CRV mount, which I'll have to find. It's in one of these boxes here. And that's something you can actually get directly from Honda. This is also and before we get off the topic too of the camshaft, this is the 45-degree VTC cam gear that's also from Cartel. So don't mean to be going on a wild tangent here, but I just thought it'd be beneficial to show you guys. This will be going with the cam as well. And I mean, this is just a modified original RBB cam gear, but again, machined to the nines. This is from Cartel. Really, really nice stuff. You can also find this on Hybrid Racing's website. So I need to dig a little bit more and find this passenger mount for you guys, but it is somewhere here in these sea of boxes. And that'll give you a good idea too as to what mounts you want to use here. So for the passenger side mount, here's what it is. And if you're looking for the part number, we got it right here for you. So this is also available on Hybrid Racing's website, and this is something that I picked up. So the reason that you need this, as you can see in the design, it's very different from the JDM K24, and this will go well with the Hasport engine mounts that we're going to be using. So all it does is it mounts on this side of the engine. So it'll be in this orientation like so, I believe. Yes, so it'll be just like this, and that will give you the mounting points that you need to run your K-swap on your Honda. So very important and something that a lot of people forget about, but this is something that should be first on your list when doing the K-swap. So on the subject of engine mounts, I'll also show you what I have here for K-swap mounts. So I unraveled this a little bit, but this will give you an idea of what we're going to be using. And this is the Hasport engine mounts. So when it comes to engine mounts for a K-swap in an EK Civic, so this is a 96 to 2000 Civic, the differences are really going to be in which subframe you use. So what I'm actually going to be doing is I'm going to be using a subframe from a 92 to a 95 Civic, which moves the engine a little farther back and it gives you a better angle for your axles. So when you're purchasing these, you have to make sure to decide, do I want to go EK subframe or do I want to go EG subframe? So these mounts are going to be very crucial for us to make sure that everything is done right. You're going to have two on the sides, and then you're going to also have one on the back of the transmission. So this will kind of give you an idea of what they look like. And I mean, this is my first time looking at them, and they're nice and shiny. So very excited to put these ones on. I think it will do a really good justice for us to do the EG subframe swap. But that's something you also have to consider. You know, you can pull them from a junkyard and things of that sort, but maybe this will be a good opportunity to show you guys the subframe that we have, which I have over here. So we can maybe just like cut or walk over. I know, just, oh yeah, walk through. So pulled this off of a junkyard car. Lower mileage, I hope. But again, this is like a carcass, so there's nothing on here. So we'll need to get the EG steering rack to do a lot of this. I do have the hardware, which is good, but I mean, look at this thing. It's absolutely disgusting, very heavy. So I think we'll have to spend some time pressure washing this off to do it some justice. And when you also do the EG subframe, you also have to make sure that you have the correct bolts. So you cannot use the ones from an EK because they will not be long enough for these to mount up correctly. As you can see, it has a little bit of a height difference here. So definitely something you want to consider when you're doing the swap there. Okay, so to go into more detail about the exhaust that we're going to be using, I thought I would actually pop open the hood for you guys to give you a better breakdown of why you actually need a K-swap header. So as you'll see, this still has the original D16Y7 in it. And when we pop open the hood, you'll notice that the engine, in comparison to the K series, is backwards. Well, the K series itself is going to be backwards. So you see, like, this is the engine itself, and then you have the exhaust in the front, and then you have the intake manifold in the rear. So what we're actually going to be doing when we do the K swap is this is all going to be turned around. So for you to be able to do this, you actually need a K swap header. So this is like a mandatory part that you're going to need. So when we go look at the engine itself, and if we were to bring it over, this would be all turned around. So this would actually be at the front of the engine, and this would be going out the back. So this is the K-swap header that we're going to be running. This is a 1320 Racing K-swap header. Now, since K-swaps have gotten so popular, you have so many different options when it comes to what K-swap header you want to use. But this is something that you want to make sure that you like, that works with your car. And for this one, this is a 4-to-1 design. So 4-to-1. And you know, that increases airflow, and especially with this one, this is a pretty beefy header, so it's gonna be pretty rowdy. Will be complemented with a full 3-inch exhaust and a vibrant muffler. So there's a lot of goodies on this one. And I also use the Honda OEM exhaust manifold gasket. You know, we want to make sure to not skip out on anything there so that we know we have the premium setup. So this will also give you an idea too as to what we need to do to make sure when we drop out the engine. So I think another day, Jacob and I, and maybe Isaiah if he's available, will come here and we'll pull the engine from the bottom, which is typically the way you do it on these old Hondas. And then we could pull out the subframe. And with this one too, I'm gonna retain AC. So the next thing I actually need to do with this car, since it's all still in one piece, is to take it to get the air conditioning Freon evacuated so that we could take off the AC lines. And once you take all the accessories and stuff off and the cold air intake and all that fun stuff, it's pretty easy to take this off. I don't know, famous last words maybe, I don't know. Jacob's looking at me, he's questioning if this is actually gonna go smoothly or not. But I'm pretty optimistic here that this should go pretty smooth. So engine mounts, of course, will be replaced here. You can see these ones, these are nice and crusty. But for the interim, we'll cross that bridge once we get there. And it's kind of a shame too, because I actually do kind of like the D16 Y7 quite a bit. I was even thinking maybe we put this one on the engine stand and start messing with it. Maybe it could start doing like a mini-me swap, which is like you put a VTEC head on one of these and then we could throw it into like a Chump EG hatch or something and take it rally crossing. But I don't want to get ahead of myself because we've already signed ourselves up for a huge project. So with that, I think this will be a good opportunity too to go into the electronics. Now, this is something you also want to be considering a lot when it comes to the ECU and what you want to be running. So for this one, I'm going to be running the K-Pro V4. Now there's so many other ECU systems out there. You can run like Haltech and things of that sort. But K-Pro is like the tried and true one from the 2000s that matches the architecture really well just for whatever you need with the Civic EK. So that'll be a good place for us to start. But I did want to show you guys the engine harness that is going to be required to do this. So this one I actually got from Rywire. So that's R-Y and then the word wire. And they've been in the game forever. I mean, I can remember going back to way back in the day and remembering that they were like some of the first pioneers when it came to K-swap wiring harnesses. So you're gonna need a conversion harness for the ECU, which is the one I have from Hybrid Racing. But this one is gonna be beneficial for us when it comes to plugging everything in for the engine harness itself. So this is the tucked wire setup. So all these plugs right here are what are actually gonna be going into the junction for the ECU, I believe, or they'll be going off the conversion harness. This is actually my first time using one of these. So this will be a cool opportunity just to see how all this stuff works out in terms of all this being labeled. I think for air conditioning, we might need to piggyback off of one of these blanks like this to be able to run the plugs for the air conditioning compressor. But again, we'll come to that bridge once we get there. But something you also need to make sure, because without this, there would be no point in being able to run the car. So now another thing is oil pump. So now in these K-series motors, one of the things that you also want to consider is that if you want this to rev out really high, one of the drawbacks with the K24 is the oil pump setup. So the one that I actually have in my hand is from an Acura RSX Type S. So a lot of people, they call this the Type S oil pump. Reason why you do the Type S oil pump is if we had it side by side, the oil pump that's in the K24 is this big contraption, and it's restrictive. It's a lot more balanced, but it won't rev as high, and that will restrict basically your output of how much oil is going to be circulating through the system, versus something with like this. This is going to be a huge upgrade for us to be able to put this on. Now, as you can see, it's very lightweight. But the only thing is you'll need to actually trim this, and we'll probably have to do this in a different video. And there's all these tutorials on YouTube already about this, but you'll essentially want to like cut through here and make this so that you can actually fit this where it would be seated in the oil pan. And then there will be a windage tray that goes over here, and then there's a plug that you need to put over here to make sure that you get the adequate amount of oil pressure. But this is a very, very beneficial swap. And if you're gonna go through all the headache, it's really worth doing. So that's also something you wanna consider as well with the oil pump setup. There's ones where you don't have to take an angle grinder to this, because I know that's not gonna be for everybody, but if you're on a budget and you kinda wanna do a little more DIY, this is gonna be the way to go. Grind this down, slap it on, get some new hardware, and you're pretty much good to go. So, I actually have the windage tray and stuff. Do you think we should show them, Jacob, what it looks like?
Let's take a look.
All right, cool. Let's do it. I think I put it over there, actually. Whoops.
Speed up times 400.
Yeah, just warp speed. Okay, so this is the windage tray. So here's the part number. This is, oh yeah, no worries. So this is the part number we have here for the windage tray. So this is what you're gonna need. You're also gonna wanna use Honda Bond. Of course, you could use like your over-the-counter RTV. I don't see anything wrong with that. But for me, since I want to stay with the OEM stuff, just like I was telling you earlier, I was using the Honda Ultra High Temp Grease. I'll be using Honda Bond. This is a silicone liquid gasket that you could put on like the timing cover, oil pan gasket, and all that other fun stuff there. So there is going to be those bolts there. And then this is also, I believe this is the timing oil pump tensioner, I think. So this is also another one that you'll need for this if you want to get the part number there. And now we will open this and we'll take a look. And since this is my first time, you're gonna have to excuse me if I don't remember everything here, but here we go. This is one of the tensioners that you'll need for this. And this will be one of the things that we end off with. Oh, that's interesting why it's a little burnt. But who knows? I mean, it's a Honda OEM part, so I won't knock it until we actually do it. But we'll cross that bridge once we get there. So I think that's everything that you need besides the actual bolts themselves. Yes, and then these are the Type S oil pump bolts. And again, these are stuff that I just bought off of eBay, but really you can find them anywhere. If you need the part number, this is also there. And I think you need multiple of these.
There you go.
And luckily you can get a full set of these. So there's different size bolts that you'll need. And I don't think there's anything really wrong with reusing the ones that are gonna come off of this, but I think one or two of them are the wrong length. So very beneficial to do these ones as well. So I'll put these ones away for now, and then we can move on to axles. So now for axles, you want to have some sort of K-swap axles. Now for people that want to go really budget friendly, you don't have to go and buy K-swap axles. There are so many forums out there and information about, you know, you could take stuff from an EP3, you could take stuff from an RSX Type S. Some people mesh half a shaft from another shaft and make it work. But what I actually did is the more plug-and-play solution so that I don't have to go through the headache of sifting through junkyards and stuff. And these are the Insane axles. So these are going to be rated for, you know, about 500 horsepower, which is probably overkill for what this... Oh, what was that? Oh, fucking hell. So we'll unbox this real quick and see what the girthiness of this guy looks like. And then, as you can... As I unravel this for you guys, it's not lubricated, so you might need to lubricate this a little bit, but anyways, as you can see, this is a pretty robust axle. You don't need to go overkill like this, but a lot of people do because it just kind of future-proofs it. And especially if we wanted to down the road boost this thing for whatever reason, we can do so. So this will be the part that goes on the hub itself, or rotates, pretty standard stuff here. But it does have a pretty hefty weight to it. I mean, you could probably do some curls with this, or some other recreational activities, if you will. So we're all pretty good there in terms of what we'd run there. You also need a half shaft, which Insane Axles also offers, which you can also find on Hybrid Racing's website. So as you can see in here, I have a whole bunch of other stuff to do this swap. One of them being, this is the clutch master cylinder. So again, we're going to be doing the clutch master cylinder swap, and I'm also going to be upgrading the booster on the back. So this is all just stuff that's good to do now while you're doing it. I think you can even use like a S2000 brake master cylinder if you wanted to also on these, or the Integras. They're a little bit better if you want to. Some of the other stuff from Hybrid, I have the immobilizer. This is actually very important. This is getting more into the nitty-gritty details, but this is something that's also worth considering. And then we also have here the K-swap conversion harness, like I was talking about before. So this is like what you would be finding with the engine harness itself. So this you actually need to mate to the ECU. So I think in this case, we'll be using the Acura RSX Type S ECU in this case. So there's that as well. So we have that here. And then to go back to the fuel system, we also have the K-swap fuel lines over here. So this will give you a better idea. These are going to be much thicker lines than what was on the original JDM K24A, and will be a pretty substantial upgrade for what we're doing here. Okay.
Pretty good on.
What's that?
We're doing pretty good on really loud noises today.
I know.
Nice and quiet.
Usually when Jacob turns on the camera, it sounds like pandemonium's happening, but we've been getting pretty lucky today. So some of the other stuff that I have, things that you want to also look at here too, is you have your, I think these are coolant hoses. Yes. So these are going to be the coolant hoses. We'll actually be using a K-swap radiator in this. I can unravel one of these for you. But I mean, this is just your typical radiator hoses here. I think sometimes you can use ones off of like Acura RSX Type S. Usually, like if you really wanted to go budget friendly, you could just go full Acura RSX Type S part out and basically just get like the majority of the stuff off of that. So that will alleviate all of your issues there. So we also have that. I also have, you know, some of the clamps here, rings, gaskets, all the other fun stuff, but I think we've covered a good majority of the stuff that will at least help you with getting started here. And I'll see if there's anything else worth mentioning. Oh, this is actually the fan. So when you run the radiator, you also want to make sure that you run the actual radiator fan itself. So this one's from Hybrid Racing. This is kind of like a universal one that you could use here. So 12 volt, you just have to make sure that you run a wire set up for the plug, which I think we can pull off of the original radiator over there. And let's actually walk over to the engine real quick, and I'll show you guys one thing about this. So you're probably wondering for the air conditioning setup, with this, we actually can retain the original AC system in this one. So like I said, once we evacuate all the Freon out of this, we'll essentially take this AC condenser and use it. But what we're going to have to do is we're actually going to have to move this AC condenser to where the radiator is and vice versa. Because again, you have to remember that all this stuff is like backwards. So it's going to be opposite day when you get in here. So we're going to actually move the radiator to over here. And if you're really balling on a budget, I had a buddy that used the original EK radiator. It's just the mounting points you might have to fabricate. But with the K-swap radiator, it makes it really easy plug and play so that you don't have to haggle with it. So that was just a choice that I made on my own. But again, I think if you had like a part out car of like a TSX or RSX Type S, a lot of this stuff you could makeshift in here, and I think you'd be pretty well off. So I'm hoping that that will be the case there, but you will have to replace the lines for the air conditioning, and you'd use air conditioning K-swap lines. So that's something you also have to consider there in terms of your budget. But hopefully that doesn't lead to you having to keep sinking money into this. In terms of the brake master cylinder, you don't really have to mess with it too much. If you want to upgrade it, of course you can, things of that sort. But I do think overall, really the biggest obstacle in front of us is just going to be taking this out. And I think it'll be a good time too to kind of just clean up all this. Again, kind of want to keep this OEM plus, so I'm not gonna go crazy with the spray paint or anything like that, but definitely want to clean the backside of the engine bay while we have it fully evacuated of all this stuff, and then we can swap things over. But I think I've covered everything for the most part. But of course, I want you guys to be able to feel free to use the comments down below. I'm always open to have a dialogue with you guys and get your guys' feedback on what you guys think here. So for the K24A that we have right now, I think it's in a pretty good spot where we're getting things at. And I do think that one thing I forgot to mention as well, as I look at this, is actually the clutch and the flywheel. So for the clutch and the flywheel, I have a lightweight 8-pound flywheel behind this, and I actually have some clips that I could probably overlay for you guys to show this. But this came from Action Clutch. It's their chromoly, I think that's how you say it, 8-pound lightweight flywheel. And of course, since it's on an engine stand, I have the tastefully clapped washers here, which are not doing much, but I was in a pinch and it was a long day and I was very tired, so sorry there. So we have the pressure plate and the stage 2 clutch. So for clutches, when you go up stages, it means like you're basically going up in power. Stage 2 is more for the street. You don't really need anything overkill because it's not going to be outrageously powerful. If this was a 1,000 horsepower Civic, maybe, but in that case, not really the case here. So we should be all good. But I think for anybody that wants to tackle this in terms of goals with a K series, is it more, do you want something higher revving? So maybe the K20 is known for having the higher flowing head, whereas the K24, of course, is known for having more displacement. So you get a little bit more torque out of these. You can't really go wrong with either, but one of the most popular things, as you see what people do, is the K24 bottom end, so just the short block of this, and then you put a K20 head on top. But again, really depends on what you want. I think with this one, we'll get the best of both worlds because we'll do the Type S oil pump, which will increase the red line. And then with the aggressive cams, that will also increase the performance. So I'm hoping this will be a little bit of the best of both worlds without me having to completely swap the head. So I know that this has been a lot of information that I've been throwing at you guys, but I know you guys have been asking for it in the comments. So I really do hope this helps anybody that's going through this process of a K-swap. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. It always is great dialogue just for everybody else in the community here. But I think with that being said, we can wrap things up. And I think for the future videos, you guys can let me know. What type of K-swap stuff would you like to see? Is there anything in particular that you're looking for? Should we do like a full breakdown by each segment beyond just this full definitive, here's everything in the kitchen sink? You guys let me know. With that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.